Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So inshallah in this lesson we'll be speaking about the incident of the disputing parties. And this incident involves Nabi Dawood AS. Now the common story that is told, and you'll find this in tafsir literature, and there are slight variations to it, but overall this is the actual story. Let's have a look at it. So one day as David, or Dawood AS, was praying in his prayer chamber, two men managed to enter and disturb him. So they climbed up the wall and disturbed him. "Who are you?" he asked. One of the men said, "Don't be frightened. We have a dispute, and we have come for your judgment." David said, "What is it?" The first man said, "This is my brother. He has 99 sheep, and I have one. He gave it to me, but took it back." David, AS, without hearing from the other party, said, "He did you wrong by taking the sheep back." And many partners oppress one another, except for those who believe. إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَقَلِيلٌ مَا هُمْ. And then the story goes that the two men vanished. And David AS realized that they were two angels sent to him to teach him a lesson, and that he should not have passed a judgment without hearing from the opposing party. Okay, so that's the common story told. Now there are mistakes with the story, and if you actually look at the Quran, you'll find discrepancies, which I'll speak about in this lesson, inshallah. We'll try to do justice to the actual clear ayat in the Quran without trying to manipulate the language or trying to fit it into this story. Now the section starts off, "Be patient over what they say." This is addressed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Be patient, because they've said a lot of things to hurt you, to try to stop the mission that you've come with, to discredit you, all these things. And actually the story that comes straight after it, the story of Dawood AS, actually has to deal with Sabr. So we'll see that. Just a side note, the common story that is told about this actually doesn't have any aspects of Sabr mentioned in it. Because what the common narrative is, that Dawood AS became frightened, too frightened to pass a proper judgment. So that would be an indication that this story does not coincide with what the Quran is explaining. So, اصبر على ما يقولون واذكر عبدنا داود ذا الأيدي إنه أواب. Be patient over what they say, and remember our servant, our abd. This is the highest station, actually scholars say, that the abd, when abd is mentioned, what follows is praise of the person who is being described in this way. وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا دَاوُودَ ذَا الْأَيْدِ. He's a possessor of strength, power, and might. إِنَّهُ أَوَّابٌ. What does awab mean? Constantly returning back to Allah SWT in all one's matters, in the good times and the bad times. And actually, one of the themes in these stories is a shift from state to state, safety and security to fear, health to sickness, and vice versa, having the dunya and losing the dunya. So this is a common theme that's found in these stories. So just keep that in the back of your mind. So let's continue. So it first of all speaks about the power he had. It says here, إِنَّ سَخَرْنَا الْجِبَالَ مَعَهُ يُسَبِّحْنَا بِالْعَشِيِّ وَالْإِشْرَاقِ. Indeed, we subjugated the mountains with him, exalting in the afternoon and the sunrise, exalting Allah SWT. وَالطَّيْرَ مَحْشُورَةً كُلٌّ لَهُ أَوَّابٌ وَشَدَدْنَا مُلْكَهُ. And we strengthened his kingdom. So that was part of the aid as well. وَآتَيْنَاهُ الْحِكْمَةَ وَفَصْلَ الْخِطَابِ. So in other words, he had spiritual strength, that the mountains and the birds would do dhikr with him. He had the strength of his dominion and he had intellectual strength. So it says, وَهَلْ أَتَاكَ نَبَأُ الْخَصْمِ إِذْ تَسَوَّرُوا الْمِحْرَابِ. And has there come to you the news of al-khasm? Here it's translated as adversaries. Al-khasm here means two disputing parties. But what did these parties do? Did they come to him during the daytime when he was actually in the place where he actually gave rulings and judged between people? No. They came at night, and they had to climb a wall as well, or a barrier, to reach him. So there was, in this story, there was a security breach. They actually went inside his chambers. Now, scholars say that they were angels, but there's no mention that they were angels. But they actually breached his quarters, where he used to pray. So he was worshipping Allah SWT at night. And we know that Nabi Dawood was known for his worship. And they actually came in during this time. One thing to note is they couldn't wait, and there was no way of reaching Dawud AS. So they were forced to climb the walls or the barriers to get into his chambers. It says, إِذْ دَخَلُوا, when they entered على داود فَفَزِعَ مِنْهُمْ. So when they entered upon Dawood AS became alarmed. قَالُوا لَا تَخَفْ. They said, don't be afraid. So that's the first thing you do. If you're going to disturb somebody and you want to say you come in peace, you say, don't be scared. We don't want to harm you. Remember, I mentioned the common story that is told. There was two brothers that scaled the wall and they entered upon Nabi Dawood. But notice two. It wasn't three or more. But if you look at the ayah, if dakhalu, not dakhala, dakhalu. So there's three or more people. على داود ففزع منهم, not منهما. قالوا, not قالا, قالوا لا تخاف. So we notice here there's three or more people. And here خصماني means two disputing groups. خصماني بغى بعضنا على بعض. We are two disputing parties where some of us have transgressed upon others. And actually, if you notice the way they said it, it was some of us have transgressed upon others. It wasn't those people have transgressed against us. See the difference? There's a difference here. What you'll find actually is these disputing parties are family, and both of them are not upset with the other. We'll find actually later on is that actually one of them wanted to help the other, but indirectly oppressed him without even knowing. Now, as the normal story goes, the common story is we have two disputing parties, but one of them has been oppressed by the other. He wants to take something back from another brother by force or by coercion. So in that story, there's a bit of conflict between them. But actually, if you read through it, there's what you could say as subtleness in the way they word it. Look at this. They say, قالوا لا تخف خصمان بغى بعضنا على بعض. Some of us have wronged the others. Some of us. So see the difference there. It wasn't that group there has oppressed us. See the difference. Anyway, what they say is خصمان بغى بعضنا على بعض فاحكم بيننا بالحق ولا تشطط واهدنا إلى سواء الصراط. So they say, we are two disputing parties, one of whom has wronged the other, so judge between us with truth. ولا تشطط. Okay. Tushtit means to transgress, to oppress, and in a way that is not befitting. To be aggressive or to be rude, for example. That's all included under ولا تشطط. Because they came unexpectedly. So what would a normal king do if somebody came to his quarters? Guards, take them away. That's what would happen. وَاهْدِنَا إِلَى السَّوَاءِ الصِّرَاطِ. So here, look what they're asking for. Judgment between us, judge with truth, don't transgress against us in any way, and guide us to a middle path. Now, getting back to the beginning of this section, have patience, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, about what they say. وَاذْكُرْ عَبْدَنَا Dawood. And remember our servant Dawood. So, this theme of being patient, this actual situation right now that we're discussing needs patience. You've got people coming into your chambers. You're a king. He had fear initially. And also they told him, judge between us with truth and don't transgress and guide us to the straight path. He had the patience to deal with the situation. Getting back. So it says here, Inna hadha akhi. This is my brother. His real brother. Lahu tis'u wa tis'una na'jatan. He has 99 female sheep. Wali, and for me, na'jatun wahida. And I have one female sheep. فقال, this is very important, this verb here. فقال أكفلنيها وعزني في الخطاب. And he said, entrust her to me. أكفلنيها. Now the common story is that the brother wants to take it back. He wants to take it for his own possession. أكفلنيها, it means to take care of it. It doesn't mean to take it. That's a very important point. So what the brother wanted, the one with the 99 sheep, was that he wanted to take care of his brother's sheep, among his sheep, to make his life easier. Why? Because he had the 99 sheep. He's got enough food for 99, so one more is not going to make a difference. He's wealthier. He has a big place for his sheep, so having one extra is not going to make any difference. He can take the burden off his brother in the maintenance cost. So actually he wanted to do good for his brother. And also he was very eloquent in his speech, and the brother with one sheep couldn't say no to him. وَعَزَّنِي فِي الْخِطَابِ. And he overpowered me in speech. Now, what is the common narrative says is that we'll realize this, the ayah after it is the speech of Nabi Dawood. So then what is said about this is that Dawud AS makes the judgment before the other brother speaks. And they say the proof of this is that the fact that there's no mention of his speech. But a few things to note. Now, if what this brother mentioned was true, why would it mention his other brother confirming this? So actually this ayah actually mentions the actual case. This is the actual case. And no one from the two sides is disputing this. So the brother with 99 sheep wanted to take care of his brother's one sheep. But unintentionally what he did was oppress his brother by asking for the sheep to go with his property. Now, what is the common story is that Nabi Dawood judges without hearing the other side of the story, and that he realizes his mistake and makes tawbah from that mistake. For Allah SWT to mention that he had wisdom, he had decisive speech, the disputing parties told him to judge between them in truth, not to transgress, and to give them a clear way or path to follow. So there has to be clarity in what he says. It's not just a rash decision, and it would seem contradictory. To justify this incorrect, I'd say it's an incorrect interpretation. The Prophet would not ever do this. He has too much of a sound intellect for this to happen. Is they say, well, he had fear. That's fazi'a minhum. He became frightened from them. But if you look at the context, they actually tell him, La takhaf, don't be scared. Prophet Dawood would not have been afraid after that. They've come to him, he's clarified who they are, he's seen that they don't want to harm him, and he's been told the actual dispute. And he's been asked to judge between them. So where is the fear? There was the initial fear, فَزِعَ مِنْهُمْ. Yes, that's human nature. But once it was determined who they were, if he was afraid, he'd call his guards or escape into a different room. That's quite obvious if he was scared. It's not befitting to say that the Prophet had fear, and because of the fear, his judgment was deficient. In fact, what you realize is the judgment he makes is the best judgment. It's the judgment of somebody who has al-hikmah and fasl al-khitab. Why would Allah SWT mention that he couldn't even give a proper judgment? That doesn't make sense. So, he says, قال, Dawud AS said, لقد ظلمك بسؤال نعجتك إلى نعاجه. He said, he has certainly wronged you. So he's speaking to the one with one sheep. He has certainly wronged you, the brother that's demanding your sheep, in addition to his sheep. Why do you judge in this way? Well, Dawud AS actually mentions the reason for his judgment. And he says, and indeed many khulata. I'm going to mention just the word khulata because the translation here says associates or close associates. Khalata, the verb, means to mix. So khalata ash-shay bi-shay. He mixed something with something else. And the person who mixes is called al-khalit, and khulata is the plural of that. And what are you mixing? Properties. So this dispute here, by the common story, is a criminal dispute. Somebody's trying to take somebody's sheep. But actually, if you look at this, the ayah, it's not a criminal case. It's a financial dispute. It deals with mixing one's wealth with somebody else's wealth. And indeed, many of those, you could say those who share their wealth together or combine their property in this case. Verily, many of these khulata لَيَبْغِي بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. What they do most of the time is they oppress one another, except for those who believe and do righteous deeds. So the true believers. And then Dawood, from his experience, what he says, وَقَلِيلٌ مَا هُمْ. So from his own experience, he's realized these people that mix their wealth together, most of the time what happens is there's oppression going on. And you can imagine the brother gives his other brother the sheep. Excellent. Okay, I don't have to worry about maintaining it, all these things. But what are all the problems that's going to be associated with this? Let's say he did give it. What problems could happen? Many problems. There could be mix-up between sheep. His sheep might give birth to newborn babies. And maybe they get mixed up with another sheep's babies. And even though the one with the 99 sheep wanted to help him out, he was actually oppressing him. So anyway, Nabi Dawood mentions the reason and tells them, don't ever do this. This will lead to problems. There'll be oppression. Another point, remember we said that the brother with 99 sheep, the common story says that the brother with 99 sheep actually wanted to oppress his other brother by taking his sheep. The Quran doesn't say that. What does it say? It says, قال لقد ظلمك بسؤال نعجتك. So him asking to look after your sheep, it was just simply asking him, bring your sheep here. And he was more eloquent, obviously, in his speech. The one with the 9 sheep was unable to say no to him. Nabi Dawood judged and then gave clear instructions. Don't ever do this. Do not mix your wealth together. Now, the interesting part is the last part. وَظَنَّ دَاوُودُ أَنَّمَا فَتَنَّاهُ فَاسْتَغْفَرَ رَبَّهُ وَخَرَّ رَاكِعًا وَأَنَابَ. The translation here is, and Dawood AS became certain that we had tried him. And how does that come in the picture? It's the story, the common story that I shared in the beginning, where the two brothers simply disappeared. And so the story goes that he understood that they were angels and that he had made the wrong judgment, which is a mistake that no arbitrator, mediator, judge would ever do, probably in his lifetime. But he done it out of fear, which is the common excuse given. So here, what they say is ظن بمعنى استيقن. He became certain that we tried him. And then he made tawbah from that. Now, with the story that I'm explaining, if he had made the right judgment and everything was spot on, why would he need to make tawbah? So that was one of the questions asked. And it's a very good question. How does that fit into what I said, the story that I mentioned? Well, first of all, ظن does not mean استيقن. It means he thought, or it came to his mind. And what was the thought? Allah had tested him. And how did he reach that conclusion? The two disputing parties made him reach that conclusion. How did they make him reach that conclusion? He thought, these people couldn't wait to see me. Maybe I'm not as accessible as I thought I was. He realized there was people in need of his judgment to settle disputes. And this was actually a way that Allah SWT wanted to show him that he needed to dedicate more time as a judge. And secondly, is the lessons from the actual disputing parties. You have two brothers. One brother who has power, he has money, he has overpowering speech, and he wanted good for his other brother. But indirectly, he oppressed him. He thought that he was like the brother with 99 sheep. And the people under his control or under his dominion that he's responsible for were like the one with one sheep. And so although he wants good for them, a thought came to him, maybe I'm committing oppression and I don't even know it. And that's what made him repent to Allah SWT. So even having thoughts that you might have done wrong for a prophet is worthy of repentance. That's the level of the prophets. And so he dedicated more time in disputes and in legal cases. Now, I know it's different from what we normally are taught, but we really need to get back to what the Quran says. And we should not use those extraneous stories to try and fit into the Quran, but rather go by what the Quran says. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين.